You weren't bullish on DeFi before, at least that's our general sense. Why are you now bullish or you weren't bullish on Bitcoin before,
Right.
rather, but why are you so bullish on DeFi now? What's
Okay.
kind of changed for you?
So let's go through it. So when Bitcoin first started really becoming popular in the early days, let's put aside 2009, 10, 11, 12, right? I was very familiar with it, very familiar with blockchain, but the original presentation or narrative, if you will, was that it was a currency, right? That it was going to be used as a currency by normal people in normal circumstances. And I just never saw that happening. To this day, I don't see it as being a replacement currency for the US dollar or for any sovereign nation for that matter. Is it a better way to transfer money? Yeah, of course, right? Are there significant benefits to Bitcoin? Yeah, of course. But it's really evolved to being a store of value. For the longest time, store of value was not the key to Bitcoin, right? There was going to be Lightning, and that was going to allow all these transactions to take place, and yada yada. And so that to me never got me excited because I still don't think that'll happen. But I've always thought it could be a store of value. I've always compared it to gold, and it's what people will pay for it. But what really changed is over the last year, as I started getting more into smart contracts in particular, and really understanding more about their capability and seeing the enhancements that had been made, that was the first thing that got me excited. What made me really blow up on it and really get fired up about it is when I went to mintable.app and minted my first NFT. And it wasn't so much just minting the process, but when I saw the royalties, right, that was the game changer. Because the challenge for all intellectual property, whether it's art, whether it's music, whether it's photography, whether it's a textbook, whether it's anything, is the rule of first sale, right? Once you sell it, everybody else has got the right to sell it, and you don't get a nickel from it. And this changes all of that. And the implications there and the applications are enormous. So that was the first thing that got me started with NFTs. Then I started digging in more on the DeFi stuff because you can't miss, from this summer, right? I mean, DeFi was everywhere and all anybody talked about, it seemed like. And so I started digging in, and there's a lot of hype, a lot of BS going around, and a lot of, the yield farming thing and APY and token binging and all this kind of stuff. But what got me excited is really understanding that DeFi turned Bitcoin or Ethereum or even several other tokens into personal banking, right? And friction-free personal banking. With the money I have in some of my bank accounts, right? I still got to go to a banker and I still have to fill out paperwork, and it's still a multi-day process. And that's ridiculous, right? Even though I'm over collateralized and I have a big NVL in my personal accounts, right? And so, then I started looking at it and realized that, okay, put aside the over collateralization. That's not really a limiting factor. But I can borrow, or anybody can borrow regardless of size, in seconds. And it's this decentralization really working to turn crypto into a personal banking platform. And that to me is the most exciting aspect of DeFi. And then you start applying that to corporations, and then you start extending NFTs and smart contracts in particular. And so you can mint anything that's digital becomes a digital tokenizable asset that can be resold, all those things together. And it really is something to get excited about, because not only can it change how people deal with their own personal assets and their own, borrowing and lending money, but also for companies, it can really allow them to monetize things they've never been able to monetize before.
But you also said something super interesting in a podcast I was listening to recently, Mark, which is DeFi is America 2.0, right?
Yeah.
So, famously, America made some fantastic strides in the early internet, laid out some massive infrastructure, created a home for Silicon Valley, and has really led the way on the internet revolution up to this point. Do you think that DeFi and crypto could be like an America 2.0? How important is it for politicians and Main Street to get their arms wrapped around how important this could be for the US as a country?
Ryan, that's a really interesting question, because the reality is, the strongest plays and the players are not American, right? We talk a lot about it, but the biggest money doesn't come from here, and the biggest, day-to-day usage from everyday people is not happening here, right? It's happening elsewhere around the world, but a lot of the development, not most, not even the biggest, is happening here, right? A lot of the biggest and the original stuff that's been going on for a while is happening in Asia. And so, we have the opportunity to really have an impact, but we can't think, Americans like to think that we're always the biggest and best at everything, but we're not really in this particular case. And that can be concerning, because if we don't, it's just like, look, most of the internet's in English, right? In terms of the governance, DNS, et cetera. And so we've got to really, hopefully, be a leader in this. Now, there's a lot of ways to discuss that. Does that mean selling half the gold in Fort Knox and buying a basket of Bitcoin and Ethereum and maybe some others? I would be all for that, because I think gold is useless, right? Gold bugs will tell you that, well, it has intrinsic value. It has this much intrinsic value for manufacturing applications, and all that jewelry usage. There's no law. There's no law of physics that says gold jewelry is more valuable than any other metal being, created into jewelry, or for plastics in jewelry for that matter, right? That's just a narrative that we've all accepted. Hey, gold is better, gold band, gold jewelry, whatever, and so every store of value has a story, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, or gold. And so if we're going to have a store of value that at least is more useful, I'd rather have Bitcoin and Ethereum in Fort Knox than I would gold. But a lot of that is just, we need as a country to start recognizing that crypto is real. And two, it makes better business sense as a country than it does for a lot of other applications. I'll give you an example. If we created our own USDC, right, issued by the Treasury, we lose money on every penny minted. We lose money on every nickel, dime, and maybe even quarter minted. We lose money on dollars and having to recycle them, right? It's bad business. And now with the pandemic, where if you have to go into a store, if you still go into a store and you have to use cash and you get change back or you get dollars back, your first thought is, should I even touch that thing, right? And so with trying to get to a touchless society for economics, USDC issued by the Treasury makes perfect sense. And so being a leader there, and I think hopefully we'll have conversations with politicians and leaders in government to convey to them that 99% of transactions are already digital, right?